Hi, everyone. Welcome to your Friday deep dive. Again, if you were on Bond's Facebook, I did a little update saying that this first session with me taking over Bond's deep dive is going to be pre-recorded. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you found the link. And yeah, welcome. Thank you so much for embracing me. And I really hope that you get a lot out of the session. Yeah, just a little disclaimer. I have small children and in this particular occasion, I couldn't find childcare for my son, but I will be on the chat to look from 10 to 11 or in and around the day. I'll keep a really close eye. So if any comments or ideas or questions, please feel free to fire them my way. That's the reason that I'm not on live. But the following week, it's important, like, sorry to get the admin things out of the way, but the following week, I've been able to sort that. So I will be able to see you at 10 a.m. on the 7th of March in kind of that live time. So I will share the Zoom just to remind you, and yeah, we'll record it and get it uploaded. So amazing. So tonight I wanted to go through really lovely topic. And I think it's something that affects all of us, no matter our background, but in particular, I do feel that if we have experienced trauma, we are experiencing this space of comparison, rumination. I do think that this is a really, really great topic. So we are going to look at a deep dive, and we're going to look at the need to feel belonging. And we're also going to talk a little bit about why it's so difficult when we don't feel like we belong. And there's so much science behind this. There's so many things that I've discussed with Bon and content that I'll explore with you. But yeah, I think that it's powerful. We do, no matter who we are, there's like some part of us as a human being that does get a little lost in a feeling of belonging. And if you've ever studied any of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of our very early stages, if we do believe in the pyramid, I mean, it shifts and changes in terms of its theories and its beliefs. But I fundamentally do think that as human beings, to feel a sense of fulfillment and happiness, and getting all those positive chemicals through us, there is real scientific evidence that a sense of belonging is important, but it's also very easy for things to impact on us, and why we may or may not feel like we belong. I certainly can say that when I speak on any topic, I often, without sharing too much, I want you to know that I do come from a place of being on a healing journey as such. And so I can very much relate to a lot of the science. So again, always remember when I'm going through anything with you that you are human, and this amazing course, these programs help us to find the words, help us make sense of why we feel the way we feel. And also, we need to let go a little bit, forgive ourselves, be kind to ourselves, and recognize that, like, it's okay if we've been feeling a little sense of like comparison, or, we don't know where we fit. I think that's just a normal human reaction, especially if we've experienced something traumatic. So, introduction, let's go for it. The universal need for belonging. Um, Try a little imagination thing with me. Imagine you're kind of in a crowded room, people everywhere, noisy, but you're actually standing there and you feel completely alone, and kind of have this sense of fight or flight in the body. And you just feel like you don't know where to go, where you belong. That you're on a little bit of the outside looking into something. And sometimes this can be one of the most like uncomfortable and painful experiences. It can create, real funny feelings. But humans are wired for connection. It's not just a want, it's a biological need. So remember, you're human if you've ever felt this. And from the moment we are born, our survival depends on being part of a group, unfortunately, whether it's family, whether it's a tribe, whether it's some sort of connection with community. When we feel like we do not belong, it absolutely can impact on our mental health. and our emotional well-being. It can impact on our overall relationships and even our physical health. So I think it's important to recognize, you know, belonging, community, feeling part of something is actually quite powerful. But equally, for those who have experienced a trauma, this sort of struggle with belonging can be even more intense sometimes. Trauma often isolates and creates a deep-rooted belief that maybe one is different. Sometimes you might feel a little bit like broken, or sometimes we get this real, like deep-rooted limiting. I call it a limiting belief because it's a thought that we've created for ourselves, but this feeling of like not being worthy of love or connection or that sort of sense of community, being liked. But why does it happen? You know, it's such a big question. What is the science behind belonging, and how does trauma create barriers to it? That's what we're going to do. We're going to explore a little bit of that in depth as we go through the content. We'll look a little bit of science, hormones, and kind of what happens when trauma enters the picture. So let's kind of start with the science, why we crave it. So belonging isn't just a nice feeling. It is nice when you feel comfortable in the space and the people and you don't feel uncomfortable in conversation. It's a human core kind of need, and it is wired into our physical nervous system. Okay. And the brain processes social rejection and exclusion in the same regions that we register physical pain. I definitely can kind of relate to this. You know, I feel I'm new to the mum world, the school mums world, and I definitely like doing drop-offs and pickups, rely on my connection with my kids, or going to the birthday parties and not sure sure where to talk, who to talk to. You know, I can definitely recognize that there's a sense of like anxiety, or did I say the right thing, or what did they think it. And that's, how crazy to be so out of the comfort zone. And I definitely don't yet feel a sense of belonging. It's been quite a while. My we're getting through the first year of reception, and it just feels harder as we get older to get out of our comfort zone to meet people. So when we kind of liken it, I think it's quite an interesting piece to say that like when we don't feel a sense of belonging, it's registered in the same space as physical pain. It can feel really deep cutting, and that's normal. If you do not feel part of something or left out of something, like that is really, really fine. Like it's not fine to feel that way often, but we need to recognize, you know what I'm saying, that this is a human reaction, and hey, like I'm just reacting in a normal way. Okay. Always want to come back to that place. Like every emotion is valid. Every feeling that you have is valid. Everything you can, work through. And I think finding the knowledge and understanding is like what uncracks the code for us, doesn't it? Helps us find space for healing and acceptance. So it means that when someone feels like they don't belong, their brain will interpret it as a threat. And then it triggers our stress response. And all of a sudden, we have this like fight or flight response. We're in this like, I'm just going to freeze as well, fight, flight, freeze. I'm sure you've gone over that with some of the other content with Bond, but we need to find a way through that. I'm not sure if you come across yet. I think I do a talk on happy hormones in module 3. We'll talk a little bit about one of them called oxytocin. It's a hormone, and it's often called like the hug. It reminds me of like the hugging hormone or a bonding hormone. It's released when we experience social connection. It can be a kind word, a positive interaction. It could actually be holding hands or a hug or a kind gesture. This kind of we get this hormonal response when we are in the presence of people we feel, a sense of respect and welcoming kind of feelings with. And it also creates a sense of like trust and safety in the body. So physically we start changing in the body when we have social connections, because we're starting to send oxytocin through the body, the brain, and that absolutely relaxes us and calms the nervous system. The opposite, to know when we're tapping into that kind of painful response. The brain will eventually, over time, when somebody grows up in like a stable, loving environment, the brain learns that connection is safe. They seek out relationships naturally and feel very secure in them. But it obviously makes sense that we draw upon our stimuli, we draw upon our past. I've done a really cool talk on our projections and how we see the world and how we take in the world in the mastermind last month. But it's really interesting because what happens when trauma enters the picture, especially in childhood, it disrupts our brain's ability to form this secure connection. Makes sense, right? Of course it would. If we're drawing on our past, if we're drawing on an experience and our body's going, okay, well, I'm going to make sure that I'm in control of that next time, or that's going to be a red flag, and I'm going to feel that trigger or that sense of fight or flight. So just to say that, if a child grows up in an environment where, that love is conditional or where they are neglected or mistreated, their brain learns whether the are positive or negative, and then that's what's often repeated is that sense or that feeling that they've had before. Um, so yeah, they might feel unsafe in sort of those closer relationships. So as adults, I may crave belonging, but simultaneously fear it. Quite complex, but very, let's say like it's common sense, of course. Leading to patterns maybe of like self-isolation or pushing people away before they can get hurt. And I see that a lot in people that I coach, young people, adults. It's very common to like subconsciously push people away when it's a fearful place. It feels unsafe in your body. So, why trauma makes belonging so difficult is that when someone experiences trauma, especially kind of relational, the nervous system adapts to protect you or protect that person. The brain prioritizes survival over connection, right? Of course it is. It's going to tap straight into that survival nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is going to go ding, ding, ding. That's your fight, flight, freeze. And it's going to go and say, like, you need protection first. That's like the first thing. And that's going to be the body's first choice over connection. And that often leaves a person hyper aware of, that potential of rejection or anything along those lines. I mean, it can also be a bit of a vicious cycle. Kind of feel this sense, like this deep sensation as a human being that you want to belong, but you are so afraid of getting hurt that maybe you withdraw, or maybe there's a pattern of like sabotaging relationships. And I definitely, this is a common thing for people and it's normal, and the brain and the body are just reacting in a way that they feel is right. And again, I think it's really powerful to kind of reflect on, yeah, that makes sense, right? Of course. Of course we want belonging. We're creatures of connection, but of course we understand why the body's going into that. I don't feel safe, and it feels overwhelming and scary. So doing the work, talking about it can help us work through some of that. One moment. Gee. Excuse me, I could feel that coming. um, some common ways that trauma impacts on our ability to belong. There's a series that I'm going to go through, but one is they name it like hypervigilance in social situations. So maybe there's like a sensation that when someone's in a space, they're always scanning for signs of rejection or betrayal, making it hard to kind of relax and connect. And I definitely can recognize moments in my life where I've done this, and I can see it in other people as well. There's this hypervigilance. This is that like, I'm gonna breathe. I'm just, up here like little meerkat. I always imagine, their little hands go up, but like you're like, what's gonna jump out at me? Like I'm not ready for rejection. If there's any sign of it, I'm gonna push that back. I'm gonna stay away from that. And it makes it hard to relax, it makes it very hard to connect. So hypervigilance is, one way that potentially trauma could impact in social situations. Another one, which is also very common, if anybody's done or read any work from Brene Brown does so much powerful research. She's an American researcher. Um, maybe check out some of her books, Daring Greatly. Or you can even find, if you wanted to search, she has this great, I think it's a TED Talk or YouTube. And if you type in just like vulnerability and shame, this is what she studies. And this is leading me to that next thing is that often, common ways that trauma impacts on our ability to belong is that often we hold a deep-seated shame or a belief that like we are not good enough. And this leads to the assumption that we don't belong. So it's kind of like, well, I'm going to be in this space maybe, but I definitely am not going to belong. I don't belong. We've created that story for ourselves based on some deep-seated shame. And I do think that Brene Brown's work, if you wanted to look that up, I think she talks loads about vulnerability and shame. And I think it's really freeing in the way that she explores it. I think shame and vulnerability could be a whole other deep dive. Maybe I'll make it a well-being Wednesday. But yes, I just think that there's so much in that. She also does a really great Netflix, if you wanted to type her in as well. So that's Brene, Brene, and then Brown. So have a look at it if you're interested, or if not, just leave it on the shelf for maybe future. But yeah, carrying on. Another way in which trauma impacts on, our sense or our ability to feel comfortable in community and belonging is there's often a sense of like emotional numbing. That's really normal as well. Again, these are all these survival mechanisms that like ting, 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 the brain and the body, the nervous system, it all starts to go off. And emotional numbing is this idea of detaching from emotions to avoid pain, which that can also make, relationships feel really distant or empty, struggling to kind of open up about how you really feel or what things, are how they're actually affecting you. It's hard to kind of have a voice. And that's really difficult as well in connection. Another one I think to think about is a fear of authenticity. I definitely can see this often. This is where we hide away a little bit of our true selves for fear of rejection. Just as human beings, it kind of leads to those shallower connections rather than deep belonging, because you never really feel, if you don't ever get vulnerable or share how you feel when you do have a sensation that you have a safe person. you know, I think it's really interesting to recognize that you really sometimes feel like nobody ever knows you. But I guess that question is, have you ever, been able to let go and truly share all of you? And I don't know if many of us ever get to that point, because there's always a sense of a fear. But sometimes there's those safe people, that safe place, maybe that one person that you can literally just talk totally unfiltered and know that there's no judgment. And there are people and friendships and partners out there that can give that to you. So, that fear of authenticity, is something that we can think about, and, maybe we can get out of our comfort zone and work through. So yeah, when someone doesn't feel like they belong, they often justify their existence in unhealthy ways. And sometimes they put their energy in different places rather than connection. Maybe it's overachievement. Definitely mine that I've done so much work over the years on is people pleasing. 100%. Something that was, post trauma, or withdrawing completely. And I think, that's very relatable. They must feel the need to prove that they are good enough to be accepted. Ding, ding, ding. And a pattern that can be exhausting and can be self-destructive. Yeah, it all just is what it is, isn't it? But this is all just powerful to know. You can kind of go, okay, I understand why I've made those choices, and my body and my brain were just going into survival mode. And now I need to work to move to another place to get out of that survival mode back into that present space. Another one they label it or they identify it with the phrase of like a justification of existence, which is interesting. It's just proving worth in a world that feels kind of exclusionary. So when belonging feels impossible, people often try to compensate. So they justify their existence by attaching it to their worth. Or to something external like a career and success and helping others or meeting societal expectations. And some of these patterns can lead to, instead of focusing on connection, you've got the overachiever. So someone who believes that being exceptional will make them feel worthy of acceptance, but no achievement ever feels enough. You might have the people pleaser, like we spoke about. They put their others' needs way before their own in an attempt to feel liked and accepted, and often at the cost of their own well-being. I think I'm an expert in that one. And then you also have someone, maybe the loner, by choice, convinced that they just won't belong, they're different, they isolate themselves before others can exclude them. All fight, flight, freeze, experiences. But, knowing about it, seeing ourselves in some of it is healing. We can work through that. We can work with that. We now understand why we have made those choices, and how maybe we can move through them. So how this kind of experience, how these things, each of these strategies is kind of rooted in the same fear, like I am not enough as I am. And trauma reinforces this belief. It's a thought process, and it makes it hard for someone to just, feel worthy without any sort of external validation. And again, another like quite well-known coach, Marissa Peer, she's coined an entire business on this idea and this power phrase and power affirmation of like, I am enough. And I think that speaks a little bit to, this particular model of belonging. I personally love the affirmation, I am enough. I think maybe taking a photo of like, or a screenshot of the words I'm enough would be a really powerful way for you guys, or if you are feeling like you looking for a sense of belonging, like I am enough, exactly as I am, who I am, how I am, what I have, what I do, what I offer, like it is enough, you're doing your best every single day and your best looks different every single day. And I think that was such good learning, so remember, I am enough. Like, let's start rewiring that brain. Write it on a post-it note. Have it on the back of your screensaver. Save images that have quotes along those lines, and just start to remind yourself, whether you believe it or not, you genuinely are enough. You're doing enough. You have enough. Take a deep breath and recognize that. Think about talking to yourself a little bit more like you talk to your best friend. But yeah, the living in with this fear that you're not enough, it can affect relationships, couldn't it? So when someone doesn't feel like they belong, it kind of ripples into different aspects of their life. So in relationships they may struggle with trust or push people away, like we said, cling a bit too tightly for fear of abandonment. At work, they may feel like an imposter. There's that like imposter syndrome, thinking, oh, I think I've done a whole talk on that once in a well-being Wednesday, always fearing that they might be exposed or not good enough. And even in social settings, they might feel just disconnected, assuming everyone has got something that they don't. And it is sad, isn't it? Because all of these thoughts and these feelings are not true. They're fundamentally not true. They're just something that we've trained our brain, and it's a story that we tell ourselves and a story that we need to reconstruct. And it can lead us to places where we struggle to set boundaries, or we seek approval, avoid all of that connection. It's quite important to reflect. And I remember when I found a language for this, I felt like I could better communicate with my partner. And I find that with clients as well, that having a language, being able to say, listen, and again, it starts to allow us to kind of get to a place where we can speak with authenticity. You can use this content to build stronger relationships so that people understand you better. You can say, listen, based on my past, Sometimes it might be something that you push somebody away, but you want to rebuild that connection. Just say, listen, I've been doing a lot of work on myself and I'm really learning here. I'm really exploring like why and, um, I potentially pushing away, and I'd really like to get a place where, I can, open up and can feel safe in a relationship. But at the moment, based on my past, I'm doing a lot of work around that. That's a really great way to be a little bit vulnerable and also just own, this part of your life and this chapter. It's a really cool, I don't know, excuse me for little sniffle there. But yes, I just think it's interesting. I think the power of this language can be transformative for relationships as well, especially ones when they might feel a little bit more distant. So here's the key. Belonging isn't something that we earn. It is something that we allow. Um, yeah, I'm going to say that again. I think it's something that we allow. How interesting, right? But we sometimes have ingrained in our head that we earn it. Healing from trauma means unlearning the belief that we have to prove our worth to belong. Instead, it's about reclaiming our inherent right for connection. That's it. We just need to allow it. It's allowing yourself to let go, let somebody in, be a bit vulnerable. And that could be anything. It doesn't have to be romantic relationships. It can be friendships. It can be rebuilding old relationships. It can be in work. Just thinking of that stuff, and we can heal wounds of disconnection and really find that true belonging. But yeah, so how does someone who has experienced trauma begin to feel like they belong? It starts with small intentional steps, rewiring the brain for safety to see that, like, we are safe in a social conversation. So engage in safe, supportive relationships that reinforce the message that connection is not a threat. Definitely, like they say, taking small conversations, maybe owning, I'm really looking to build a deeper connection, or I'm trying to, rebuild our relationship. But I've been doing a lot of work and I'm trying to work on myself on why I do push people away. And I think maybe I've done that to you. Like that's a very raw, open conversation, but definitely one that I've seen people rebuild like friendships, and those friendships have gone, deeper and stronger and even more meaningful over time. You know, you can practice lots of self-soothing techniques to calm the nervous system. So I'm often a huge advocate. Definitely something that's changed my life is breath work and yoga and meditation, mindfulness. It really does help you like tap into the present moment. So something like a slow exhalation in itself can support you when you might be in these situations to find a bit of space that's calm and maybe open up a conversation with someone beside you. So slow exhalation, we breathe in and we slowly exhale. Oh, that felt really good. Small, small things. And then once the nervous system's calm, you might be able to look around the room a little bit different and think everyone's feeling the same as I am. Grounding and mindfulness is just being in present moment. So grounding might be looking and saying like, okay, what is the truth in this moment physically in my environment? I've got a roof over my head. I'm dry from the rain. There's um yeah, a toilet and warmth in this space, and it's a party and it's celebrating, and I'm here because I have been invited, and the truth is that somebody wants me here and I am enough and I do belong here because I was invited into this space, and all of that stuff. Just grounding is like looking, I'm touching the floor, I'm touching the walls, I'm seeing what is it around me, and I'm just trying to be fully present. That's a bit of grounding, and also kind of moving into mindfulness is this space of being as present as possible, trying to get out of our heads, and recognizing that like there's other places that feel safe, and we don't have to always feel safe when building relationships. So we want to replace the phrase I am broken or I'm not good enough with I am really truly in this moment learning to connect. I am learning. That's a great phrase. I'm learning to connect. I am learning to open up. I'm learning to share my authentic self. I'm learning, to set boundaries. I'm learning that I'll never please everybody. There's a lot of things that we can use in terms of those positive affirmations, writing them out, reading them out, taking a deep breath around them. That's a lovely way forward. And also just noticing, you'll do a lot of this work throughout Bond's course, but just noticing your thoughts and questioning their validity. I've always used this like concept of, if you could be a little fly on the wall to your thoughts. Sometimes I do it like a journaling activity if I feel a little bit out of control of my thoughts, and I just start writing down all those things that I've been thinking. And sometimes like when I look back at it, I'm like, I would that's crazy. I've put this like, mental I want to know, I don't know, if I don't know, just thrown up all over the page. And then I'm looking back at it and I'm exploring, is any of this true? Is any of this valid? Looking at it from an outside perspective, is this, where's this come from? Can I just let it go? Is this just, an old habit of thoughts? So being critical of your thoughts, like, is this actually true? And 90% of the time, anything like that is probably not. We need to kind of recognize that in ourselves. So yes, I think it's quite cool. And yeah, I think that another way to kind of create connections or change a little bit of the nervous system, maybe taking a small risk is like join a community or a group that shares a common interest. I personally found something like a yoga class. There's lots of things out there. You don't have to do a yoga class, but I think that I started to go to yoga thinking I was going to get a good workout, but in the end, I've created a community and friends, through that big community that's created. And it's really interesting that just going to, a social event like drawing or whatever, it does really open you up. And when you're doing something that you enjoy together, a men's group, a women's group, I think that those sorts of things, joining to go play bowls or, all that kind of stuff, like maybe just get yourself out of your comfort zone, a walking group, a photography course. If you feel comfortable, join something small. There are so many things out there nowadays that can support us in terms of like being welcomed into a community. Have a little look if you feel like don't feel connected. That's a really small thing. And yeah, like I kind of said earlier, allow a little bit of vulnerability into your relationship, just a little smidgen. You'll know when it's right or when it's not, but just start small, sharing little truths and just see how they are received. And it could just even be sharing a little bit about the work that you're doing, some of the content that you connected with on your journey. I think that we're all on a journey. I think we all forever could be doing a little bit of work on learning who we are, post trauma, where we are in this chapter of our lives, where we are moving ahead, how we want to use our experiences. So never be shy to share that authenticity, the learning and the growing. I think that that is so attractive in any sort of relationship or, friendship or, in a safe context. I think it's great. And self-compassion. Oh, guys, self-compassion is so hard, but it is the foundation of all of this. So being somebody who can look yourself in the eye and be like, have you done your best today? Even if it was just getting up and putting some clean clothes on and relaxing on the sofa. Was that your best today? Yes. Yes, that was my best today, and I'll do another best day tomorrow. I can change that, you know. And then, maybe asking yourself in terms of like building a connection. Can you phone somebody? Can you maybe just text in this moment and ask somebody to meet for lunch or a dinner? And slowly just go easy on yourself. Be good to yourself and remind yourself, treat yourself a little bit more like you treat your best friend or child. You would forever be telling them like you are good enough. You belong. Like, come on, you absolutely do. And you deserve great connections and you deserve, a lovely community, and you are worthy. So you are enough, you're worthy, you deserve, connection. All of this stuff is all good stuff. And that's self-compassion. It's reminding yourself that, as a human, we need this, we're hardwired. So, you've got this. You absolutely have this. Um, but overall, you need to treat yourself with kindness that you would offer somebody else. You need to recognize it as well. Like, it is tough, isn't it? But coming back to that quote that, like, I always kind of thought belonging actually was earned. Do they like me? Am I earning my place? But actually, it's allowed. That is one of my favorite phrases from today's talk. And we need to recognize then that belonging starts with accepting ourselves as we are. What's the phrase in the UK? Warts and all. I love that phrase. That you've got this, you are enough, you are worthy of all the beautiful connections and dreams and experiences that you have. You can do this. So yeah, just it's the power of like owning your space in the world. Belonging isn't really about fitting in. It's about being seen and being present, and being valued for who you truly are. So don't be afraid to show those beautiful unique sides. Trauma tries to tell a person that they are unworthy of connection, but that's a big fat stinking lie. It is. We are all worthy, every single one of us, of these connections that we hold so tightly. Healing is just about rewriting our story, rewriting. A little tripped up on that word, but rewriting the narrative, rewrite your story, and recognize that belonging starts from within. If you ever sit there and you are feeling or had an experience when you were feeling that you didn't belong, I think that if anybody does connect with journaling or writing, I would definitely a great technique is writing out the experience. Today I was at a children's party and I felt uncomfortable to talk to any parents, so I just sat in the corner. Um, you know, ev or I went over to the one parent I knew, looking to people, please, I wonder if they like me. I don't feel enough. Is this a real friendship? Like all of that kind of feeling, like write it down. I don't know what the experience you might have next or whatever it is, if that's a connection that you might want to rebuild, write out how you felt in it, and then maybe rewrite the story as if, that you are already great friends and that this person will accept you, almost like rewrite that narrative, rewrite the story so that it went exactly as you'd imagine, without the doubt, without that critical brain, without the I'm not good enough, and just trust that you are good enough. And probably left, if you did sit and talk to somebody new, they probably felt like, oh, that was really nice to talk to somebody, and they're probably feeling the same way as you. Remember, we're all like right in the same boat. So no one needs to justify their existence. Do not justify it. You already belong simply because you are here. The work is not to become worthy, but to unlearn. Let's unlearn. Today's about unlearning the belief that, you were ever unworthy in the first place. It's not true. And healing, guys, is honestly possible. Connection's possible. And belonging is yours. It's yours to just claim. Genuinely from the bottom of my heart, I need you to know that you've got this. You've got this experience. And you really can. Simple phrase, but you can do hard things. You can work through your experiences and you can find that light and that connection at the end. I wanted to highlight as well, just a little link. So when I was going through some of this topic, it did make me think of Mel Robbins. She's written, it's a very recently published book called The Let Them Theory. And I would suggest that either listen to it in an audiobook or read it if you're a reader. You don't have to if not, or maybe she does a lot of talking on her podcast if you like listening to some of this like self-help content on your own. Again, no worries if not. But I do feel like after going through the entire duration of her book, she does put a lot of this in context of this ability to let people feel and be what they need to be, and then let me, it takes your power back and saying like, let me then make a choice around that without feeling, that I don't know, sense of vulnerability. There's so many links to this idea of belonging, and so many other great little golden nuggets of learning in that book. So yeah, I wish you all a beautiful Friday. Remember, I will be there to read any comments if you wanted to comment. If not, just soak it in, write a few notes, take a deep breath, come back to it whenever you need to. But I have thoroughly loved this topic. I've thoroughly loved this deep dive. And I wish you an amazing Friday if you watch it on Friday. Again, I'll see you next Friday, but live, back to normal, all being well. And yeah, I really genuinely love working for and with all of you. So peace and love. Have a great one. Take care.